Bring out the talent.
Bring out the talent.
Bring out the talent.
Welcome to Bring Out the Talent, a podcast featuring learning and development experts discussing innovative approaches and industry insights. Tune in to hear our talent, help develop yours. Now here are your hosts, TTA's CEO and President Maria Melfa and Talent Manager Jocelyn Allen.
Jocelyn, it sounds like you have a little frog in your throat there.
I had a little moment, but it does not stop me because my dance moves were still killing it. So,
okay,
you know,
good.
I don't, nothing holding me down over here, and I'm fine.
Well, very excited about our topic today because as culture is everything to me. It's one of the most important things. And I have been running TTA for 30 and a half years. I can't believe it's already been a half since our 30th anniversary.
Years gone by.
And if I could say one thing that I have learned, the most important lesson is that culture is everything, that you just have to make sure that it is non-negotiable and you hire people that match your values and your mission, that it is key to everything. So let's get started. Workplace culture has become a pivotal topic in the modern professional landscape. According to a recent study, companies with highly engaged employees can see as much as a 200% increase in performance, while those with actively disengaged employees face high turnover rates, costing U.S. companies approximately $3 million per day in a search of replacement workers. Can you believe that?
Day?
Per day.
Even just like reading that while you read it, I was like, that says day.
know.
Oh my gosh.
I bet it could even be higher than that. This underscores the critical importance of cultivating a positive and supportive workplace culture. Furthermore, in a recent poll by Korn Ferry, having a positive culture was the most important thing for employees, considerably higher than pay. And they actually had a really cool poll with a lot of responses saying that too. I think it was like 65% was culture compared to the 25 of pay. So it was extremely high, almost triple. So in this episode of Bring Out the Talent, we welcome Dr. Mechelle Roberthon, a certified professional in talent development and a renowned keynote and workshop presenter with a Doctor of Education in Learning and Organizational Change from Baylor University and a Master of Science in Education specializing in training and performance improvement. Dr. Roberthon brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Today, we will discuss the intricacies of workplace culture strategy, discussing its impact on organizational success and employee well-being. She will share key components of an effective culture strategy, addressing emerging trends and challenges, and offer practical insights on building and sustaining a positive workplace culture. Whether you are an organizational leader or an HR professional or a truck driver, or a dog walker, or a server, or whatever, professional athlete, today's conversation will provide valuable takeaways for fostering a thriving work environment. Welcome, Dr. Mechelle.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for being here today. We're very excited to have you.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Those were some crazy stats in the introduction, my friend, when we're talking about workplace culture, the increase in performance that it gives, how much it's valued, because let's be honest, if we could split our lives in two, it is financial and then it is living. Right. So obviously those would be the most important things, but to see how differently they are weighed now based on how culture and workplace environment has evolved, it's really insane that we're not talking about it more frequently. But we love the subject, and it's always number one on TTA's list, and we're thrilled to be able to talk to you about it today. It's broad. Workplace culture, right? Like, what does that mean? How many places does it apply to? And it's often misunderstood. Can we How would you define it in the context of its impact on organizational success, employee well-being, retention, all of the things that were mentioned in the intro?
Absolutely. Workplace culture is so broad. I took it upon myself, this had to be 2023, to make an exhaustive list of everything that makes up workplace culture that I'm going to share with you in just a sec. When I think of a definition, if I had to give you an informal one, the informal definition would be the vibe of a workplace. But I have exhaustively defined, well, what makes up the vibe? And what makes up the vibe, I literally pulled my phone out because I had to pull out a picture that I took of my whiteboard where I wrote down every thought I had that makes up the vibe of a workplace. So I'm just going to rattle some stuff off really quick just so we can get an idea. Workplace culture is how decisions are made, the differences of your workforce, the internal mobility. To what extent do people advance? It's raises, pay, bonuses, benefits, perks, how frontline employees are treated, the focus for customer experience, how managers lead, to what extent senior and executive leaders are held accountable. It's the company's website. It's how your other geographical locations are included or not included. It's your policies, systems, workflows, complaints, praises. It is how you communicate organizational wide, departmentally. It's your professional development and training or lack thereof. And then the last thing I put here, to what extent is professionalism expected? And I actually wrote like a lot of other nuanced things like good and bad hires, sacred cows, giving and getting psychological safety, its attitudes, mentorship, management. That makes the vibe. And so many times organizations don't even define the culture. And I was on a podcast some years ago and the host asked me, he said, well, if a company doesn't define the culture, then what's their culture? I said their culture is being defined, but they don't have any control over it because they didn't establish or set the definition themselves. And if you don't set it, the employees will. And so in another sense, you can look at workplace culture as it is how people answer this question. How's work going? To someone who they feel safe with. That's your culture. So I wonder what the janitor would say. How's work going? What would the COO say? How's work going? And it has to be to somebody, their response has to be to someone who, if they told the gut ugly truth, there's no repercussions. They don't fear what their response is going to do. That is the raw dog truth of what they are experiencing from that vibe. And it is created in departments and meetings from the top down, from the bottom up. It's not just from the top. It's not just HR. Everybody's a walking cultural experience in every workplace.
That's a lot.
It
It is. So I know you mentioned all the attributes that you have written on your whiteboard.
Yeah.
So out of those, what are some of the key components that you see when you're working with a company that does have an effective or strong workplace culture? Are there any key areas that stand out the most?
Yes. And my very first one is values. I've been coaching a lot of clients or consulting with a lot of clients about values. And I tell them that values is the foundation of your house. Values are the reason you should hire people and fire people and accept certain vendors. You fire somebody because they do not have the values. You hire somebody because they do possess the values. You go with this vendor because you like the values. You all have joint or shared values. So companies that are getting this right, this vibe check in their organizations, they are highly value-driven organizations.
I like that because
Right.
values is everything.
It is, and they hold
Yes.
people accountable to them, right, Maria? Like, they don't just have them plastered in the break room because they look pretty. I mean, it's a part of your performance evaluations. It's the justification for bonuses. They really integrate the values into the being of an organization.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, how that having a positive culture has been one of the, biggest things that I want to focus on and focus on all the time because it's not like one and done, right? The biggest thing is like respect too, because we all come from different backgrounds and it's just so important. And I tell everybody that, of course, in any type of relationship and work, and we're pretty lucky that we have a good group that gets
Right.
along pretty well with each other. But every once in a while, when we do find issues, the big thing is that we're all coming at it from a good place. So if everybody has good intentions, and there's no reason why we can't work it out. And that's where I feel like respect is. It's like if we respect each other's like opinions and realize we're all working really hard, we all want to do well. So just because Susie might not agree with Larry, that doesn't mean that they don't respect each other. So
That's right.
I like what you're saying a lot. So important.
Yes, I agree. I will also say the second most popular thing I see in organizations that's doing it right is that if they describe an employee as a good employee, they're factoring in two important things: performance and behavior, not either or, both. So somebody who has high performance but low behavior is not a good employee. I do not care that they have great outcomes, but they're a jerk to everybody. Get this person out of your organization or work with them on behavior modification, because that is not a good employee. Because, boy, Maria's so reliable and her reports are always on time and she's so accurate, but my goodness, it's difficult working with her. I don't want an employee like that. And so cultures that are doing this right, they value their values and they uphold them, hold people accountable to them, but they also are expecting not just performance, not just good outcomes, but also really good behavior that fits those values.
Right on there too, because we certainly have had some people that have been very high performers, but they did not fit in with the culture. They were not nice to other people and felt because they were high performers that they could do whatever they want to do.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I also know we've had some people that have been incredibly nice to work with and great people, but maybe they were not performing. And it's funny because that always is a much harder decision, as we know.
Can let me say something to that, because you're so right. So on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have great attitude. You're enthusiastic. You're optimistic. Someone saying, "Hey, Jocelyn, I want the stretch assignment," and as the manager, you're like, "Okay, I'll give it to you." But you always have to rework their work, or they're inaccurate on some things. That will not do for the culture. And here's the problem with those kind of employees: you would keep them on because they're nice, because you like
Yes.
him, because he's so sweet, because she's so kind, and yet the team is struggling with picking up their slack, with filling in the gaps. That's gonna exhaust those moderate behavior, high performing people who are just like, "Look, I got a decent attitude and I'm doing great work, but this slacker we have who is
Yeah.
nice, they bring baked goods on a random Tuesday and they feed our bellies and we feel so happy and we take selfies and they're a good time, but I don't wanna be on a project with them. There needs to be equal attention given to them too."
That's such a good point because I think that that is an area that may have more blind spots than others for sure. Not just about because whether people say it or not, work is emotional. We are human beings, and how do we not? It's not. It doesn't happen. It's your feelings and what drives us to do well and perform is based on emotion. Like it is. It's just it's DNA. So, but how that lack of action on the organization's part and what it does to other people who are upholding their end of the bargain, it looks a couple of different ways. One, okay, cool. Like I'm not valued because look at all this work I'm doing. And like this person is keeping their job and I'm staying in the same place that they are and I'm doing all their work for them. Right. And then the other side of it is, okay, so that maybe that's expectation. And I can dial it down a little bit
Mm,
because I can just do less and stay. And then what
yeah,
does that do to the organization? All of a sudden, your culture is upended and people are taking the positive spins and turning them into negatives. I mean, are we getting somewhere here,
Yeah,
Cheryl? I mean,
million
is that what we're talking
percent.
about? Right. But
I'm
Million
serious.
percent.
that's why culture is
Yes.
so important. There's
Yes,
not a thing in the
that's right.
organization's success that it
That
does
part.
not touch. That it does not touch.
So we need not just business owners in the C-suite. We need everyone to actively drive and participate in their culture. So we go so hard about leaders. It's from the top down. I just want to talk for a minute from the bottom up, because it's easy to blame top down. I love blaming leaders. That's easy. And HR, I'm hard on HR groups. I'm like, you got to do better, HR. But boy, if I got a bunch of entry level frontline people in a room, here is how hard I would go. You impact the culture from every hello and goodbye or lack thereof you give on your team. Let's say at TTA, there's this room and maybe there's cubicles and you all work close together and someone walks in and they don't speak every morning. They are setting a tone, they're setting a vibe. So you can't blame the leader for that. You didn't speak. You don't say goodbye. If Maria asks for an email and we're colleagues and I go, I'm not emailing her. Whoa. Because if Maria had to answer, how's work going? And she goes, let me tell you about Mechelle. I'm her workplace culture experience. I am the reason she could leave her job. That has nothing to do with the boss or probably pay or benefits or all those other things. But it's something on that list that I mentioned. It's her relationship with me as a colleague is a strain that could be a problem too. So I really want everyone to see their responsibility in creating culture.
Love that.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely right.
I love it.
So, what about where the conversation around workplace culture is going? What do you see as some of the emerging trends or maybe significant challenges that are kind of modern right now, right? That organizations should really think about and be proactive in addressing?
The most popular one, I sometimes do a hard eye roll to it, but people mean well, and it's all things generations. This is very popular. Dr. Rob, can you do a generations training? I've only seen that done well once as a trainer in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I was skeptical at first, but he handled the crowd very well and gave such a great perspective. And the reason I typically do that hard eye roll is because if we're just going to rag on the youngest generation, count me out. It's not productive. I'm a millennial. Boy, years ago when that was all the rage, millennials are insert everything bad. I was at conferences hearing this going, I don't feel included at all. This feels icky. And I didn't choose the year in which I entered the earth. It's weird. So I don't even like the jokes about different generations because it's unproductive. They can't choose when they came. But this trainer in Baton Rouge, you know what he said? He says, have you ever thought about who raised them? So when we talk about Gen Z and they're always on their phones, who put the phones in their hands? Not Gen Z. It is X and Y who raised them. I have boomer parents. It is not my fault. I learned PowerPoint in third grade. That doesn't make me Einstein. That's just the time I lived in. I went to the Boys and Girls Club. They had computers. There was Microsoft PowerPoint. They taught us how to do the transitions with the clapping hands. Remember that when you go to the next slide? We overuse that. So generations is popular. And I would also say accountability. Everybody's on me about accountability training or know-how. Literally got an email today, a new client I'm about to onboard. In the description, it says, work with their team on accountability. And I'm going, wow, we can't shape this one. People are typically asking, so the trend here is, what is accountability and how do you do it? How do you actually hold people accountable? And then I think the scary thing is, what do you do when you hold them accountable and they have not met whatever expectation that you set? Most people are afraid of what do I do then? And they typically know the answer. It's some courage challenges there with actually doing it because guess what, Maria? The employee's nice. So I don't want to write them up. Or she's a good worker. So I don't want to let them go. Or we struggle with filling positions and I need my workhorse. So I don't want to let them go. So I'll let them damage my culture because I'd rather have a body than to have a productive, nicely behaved person in my organization. So there's this scarcity mindset there too.
I mean, when you say it like that, right? but seriously, I know it's all the plate of spaghetti, right? That's like a reference we love here at TTA, where it's like, no matter how big your plate is, how much spaghetti's there. What happened when you put the fork in and start twisting it? Oh my God, this guy on the outside starting to come in. All of a sudden, your bite's this big. Can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. Spaghetti on a plate.
It's funny when you're talking about generations because I'm a baby boomer and my computer class born in 1923.
And yeah, I think that's when the boomer generation started.
Because they changed the year.
Yeah, they did. Absolutely. They changed it yesterday. You guys just don't know. So
Oh,
I
gosh.
always like to say I'm older than I am. It's funny because that's a
It's a
joke that
trick.
I always say when people sit there and they lie about their age on their birthday. So if you turn 50, you're like, oh, I turned 30. And I'm like, that's actually not good because then people look at you saying, wow, she looks really old. So when I turn 50, I'm like, I turned 75. And then people like, wow, she looks really good for your age. So
I like it.
that's what I do. So
Work smarter, not
so
harder.
exactly. So regarding that, it's funny because I remember my class was intro to computers and it was a lecture class and we didn't even have computers, which is so funny.
That's
That's the best
Isn't that so funny?
introduction to computers, and we're
Yes.
just gonna really prepare you right now because
Absolutely.
they're not
Here's
here
a
yet.
exactly. Here's a picture of a mainframe. They
Oh,
exist in some companies such as IBM or Digital Computer, but we haven't seen those yet. We don't have personal computers are just coming out. So very interesting. So
it
yes.
is.
Yes.
That's a recipe for some bad training, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure.
So, a recent study by SHRM found that 58% of employees who quit a job due to workplace culture said their managers were actually the main reason. And, like, is that managers, right? Is that direct manager? Is that higher up than that? Is that like the ultimate leader? Like, I'm going sidebar here, but like, like manager is, there could be a lot of them. What underlying issues do you think contribute to this statistic? What a word, statistic, regardless of who said manager is and where they're placed in the organization. How do we change this? What are we equipping with our managers with to build and sustain the positive work culture that presumably the top down has created?
Well, it's such a good question. Well, to answer your first question, it is almost always the direct manager that is feeding that statistic. So, hey, indirect leaders, I just gave you an out because it's usually the direct, but indirect does have a part in it sometimes, but mostly direct. And there's a number of things, as you would imagine, that's contributing to that statistic. There, I was in an HR team once, and the director of HR had found this article that said, "Who are you loyal to?" And it was pretty much challenging senior leaders to be loyal to the executive team. And it was always like, you need to be loyal to the group above you. And I remember instantly being like in disagreement with that, with the title. She read the article at an HR meeting and everything. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this the mind frame that you have? Why do I bring that up? I think that's one of the causes to this statistic. If the employee feels that the leader is not for them, but they are going to do everything to serve the leader above them and that team, and they come first, employees feel that. So for a minute, let's forget our titles. But let's remember a job or a role in which you reported to anyone who reported to someone else. So just think about that for a second. How would you feel if when you went in to ask for a resource or you asked for some assistance, and your leader didn't give you the time of day because they had a meeting with their boss or their boss's boss needed something, or you had an issue, but the boss's boss said no, and you wanted your leader to advocate and the leader just wouldn't advocate for you because they didn't want to disrupt or upset the leaders above them. I don't have any trust or confidence in my direct manager at that point. Also, you find with direct managers, failing to respond and act to conflict issues in their department is huge. I guarantee you that's probably top two things leading that statistic. So if Jocelyn and I are in the same department, we have a riff. We've had a riff for a while, and the leader does nothing to resolve it or sides with one of us, that's going to disrupt something between Jocelyn and I. If the leader sides with me, Jocelyn's going to go, well, wow, even the boss likes Mechelle. This is not a good environment for me to be in. She either is going to look to move to another department within that organization or to go external. But if the boss isn't actively resolving conflict because they are avoiding or they believe the cliche that time heals all wounds, time has never in its life healed a wound. It's just made it comfortable for us to be uncomfortable. Time makes it easy for us to not talk about the scary thing. So leaders who lead like that doesn't feel good at all. Also, I think a while back I read a statistic that said lack of training was one of the top three reasons people quit their jobs. So if there's a manager who refuses to develop their employees, that contributes to that statistic too. anything from didn't get a proper onboarding and orientation experience, which always makes my skin crawl. I'm an orientation nerd. I love a good orientation. But lately I've been saying not orientation. I love a good onboarding. Onboarding is a journey. Orientation is an event. The onboarding journey for a new hire should be 1 year. Orientation is just first day. Great. We wowed them the first day. And then the next day, they don't know what time they're showing up, if they have a uniform, if who they're reporting to, what's my day to day look like. So a leader who's not even methodically planning that out is a turnoff. And if the employee is looking to develop somebody who likes your company, they seem very loyal, they're very interested, and they're hungry, they're asking to learn to, what does that department do? Or, ooh, there's a conference. Could I go to that? And the boss doesn't really have any interest in that. That's a turnoff for an employee. So that lack of development, lack of conflict resolution, and kind of being loyal to their leaders and not being selfless towards their team. I know that you all probably have heard of Simon Sinek and a big fan of his. I had the privilege of hearing him speak at an Association of Talent Development conference in 2016. And he's just so good. And he said this: your employees don't mind as the boss if you have the bigger paycheck, you have the better parking spot, you have whatever, insert whatever perk. They don't even mind that. They expect that you have that. What they do have a problem with is that you don't put it all on the line, that you don't risk it all in advocacy of them. So if management is doing something and your department is being negatively impacted by it, they're looking for a leader to not go and flip tables over and be rude, but to say something in support of, in defense of their teams, and not to, and this is a fine line, don't create a us versus them. That's not productive. That's not a good culture. Let's not make the top managers evil or bad. It's just simply saying, hey, Maria, my department has some concerns about this new change you're going to roll out. Here are some ways that it might impact us that you all haven't brought up just yet. And then it's going back to the team saying, hey, I don't have an answer on it yet. I've met with Maria. She's heard everything I had to say. I'll keep y'all posted on what's coming next. So leaders who refuse to even do that because Maria's the CEO and I don't want to ruffle feathers. What if it doesn't ruffle feathers? What if it enlightens her that you've given her a different perspective? So it's these kind of simple things that leaders are not doing.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
love that. And a lot of times it could be that the leader has insecurity issues of addressing it or talking about it when it really has nothing to do with how the leader will handle it.
Yep.
They might be afraid, oh, my leader's going to get mad at me,
Yep.
versus maybe my leader wants to hear this feedback because feedback is everything, right? No, it's very interesting, and there's so many different ways that we can like slice and dice this, but it truly is one of my favorite conversations. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm already, you have my head spinning a lot
No, I'm
in
obsessed
a
with them.
good way. So, can you share any success stories where you worked with an organization and they did not have a so great culture and you were able to identify areas and give them strategies to help change?
Absolutely. So I'm going to think back to 2 employers ago. I'm working for myself full time now in my own organizational development firm. So when I was in this in-house role in finance, they did a really great job at allowing me to shape the culture in my department. And I had to remind myself a couple things. I was in an enterprise-wide role, but I also had a center of excellence that I managed. So we impacted the entire enterprise. I had to constantly tell myself not to boil the ocean. Mechelle, focus on this department first. Let's get some performance excellence happening here first, and then I can deploy them across this enterprise and everybody's going to benefit. So I spent a lot of time shaping the performance and behavior of that team. Everything from really great time management skills, getting them to see themselves as entrepreneurs. And I would tell them, I want you to work your role like you are an entrepreneur, but inside this organization. Think of everybody we serve as a client. What would you do to follow up with a client, to follow through after you get off a call, sending a thank you email? It is asking really good questions to assess their needs, client satisfaction. So I got them in that kind of mindset, and all of it was really welcome. And then it was like a slow, like on ramp to get them to deploy across our enterprise. And we brought the principles we mastered as a department in any Microsoft Teams conversation we had with anybody. And we started to see meetings shift. Somebody from another department, from the facilities department, she was a supervisor in facilities, reached out to me after one of these Teams calls and she says, "Can I come over to your office really quick to chat with you about how you prepare for meetings? I really like the way you run meetings." So just follow me here. Mastery in my department first, and then not trying to even teach anyone how to perfect what we were perfecting. Someone observed there's something different when you lead a meeting. Can you teach me the technique? Can you teach me the framework? And that let me know, oh my goodness, this organizational culture thing that I'm trying to master within the talent development department is now oozing and spreading throughout the organization. Don't boil the ocean. It just takes some consistent, kind people who are patient and graceful and all the cheesy things, but are so true. And so I took that meeting. Was it a disruption to my day? Yes. But I was absolutely pleased that somebody from another department was saying, "What's your framework?" And talking to her, I didn't even know I had a framework, but I did. I told her what I did to prep, what do I do during, how I include everyone. So if I've noticed Jocelyn hasn't spoken in a while, I'm gonna hold space for her. I'm gonna do it in a way that doesn't make her feel called out. And prior to me calling on her, I probably sent her a private message just saying, "Hey, my girl, checking in. You good? I haven't heard from you. Anything you want to add?" Okay, cool. Just little things. The way I play music before the meetings, me speaking to every single square that pops up. "Hey, Maria. Hey, Jocelyn. Hey, Paul. Happy Wednesday." Those little things. And then I got to the business things. So that organization really blessed me. They allowed me to be. They trusted kind of the experience that I brought in. And then I was getting called for just consults from other leaders. "Help me with my department meetings. Help me with this issue that I'm having. What is it that I'm missing?" So I just appreciate that they allowed me to pour into them and to try some things. I was not successful in a lot of those things, but it was the willingness that made it so great.
I
I
know.
know,
Don't just
she's
sit in there
unbelievable.
smiling, shaking head. What an incredible impact you had.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. It's a
It's an
beautiful story.
incredible
And
story.
like, there's and there's a piece of that too, because I totally hear you. I think that that's one of the bigger struggles that people have is the boiling the ocean thing. That like it's by the time you realize that you have a problem or something to address, it's like I need to fix this now. Otherwise, what's going to happen tomorrow? How do you teach that? Like, what did you do to teach people to like breathe and just say like, here's where I'm going? Because you did that yourself, but I honestly know that I think depending on somebody's mindset, they won't be able to shake them out of it themselves.
I agree, and I do have a resource. I live and breathe the time management matrix by Stephen Covey. It's in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I surprisingly have never read the entire book, but this chapter that talks about time management, there's a resource that I share with every team I join, and it is his time management matrix. What the 4 quadrants are in this matrix: urgent and important but not urgent. And then, so it's this 3-page PDF. So it's not the entire book, but it explains what goes in each quadrant. I implement that everywhere I go, and we speak in quadrants, but that helps people not to boil the ocean because I'll say, "Is it a quad 1? No. So let's breathe here. Let's give ourselves some grace. Let's not put a Friday deadline, and this thing is due in October. Ooh, what is due this week?" And now I'll hear them name some things. I'll say, "Okay, let's put that in quad 1. If this is due next week, no." And I would give them very strict parameters, like quad 1 are only for things that are due today or past due. If it's not due today and it is not past due, give yourself some grace and put it in 2. It is not 1. And it took a while, but afterwards it reduced stress on my team. I was doing that time management matrix training for other departments. And then to hear leaders outside of my talent development department go, "Mechelle, I'll email you, but it's a quad 3." And I'll go, "I love it." I'm like, "That's great. Don't email me first. Email your boss. I'm good." So I love that they were adopting the language. So you can teach them not to boil the ocean, but it's going to take a lot of patience with them. And they need a tool because everybody's used to everything being urgent. And if you have a title, they instantly assume it's urgent. So I had to teach my team every email from me does not take top priority. If you're working with a client on a deadline, you serve that client. I can wait, but Here is how you assess if I can wait. If you open an email from me and there is no date attached, you are to respond to me and say, "Hey, Mechelle, when would you like this by?" The date drives if you stop what you're doing to answer me, but not just from my title alone. Don't neglect your other responsibilities. So once they got comfortable with that, I started going higher. If the CEO emails you, don't drop everything. Assess what he's asking and see if it's truly urgent before you get flustered and freak yourself out. So I constantly had to teach that, but it is teachable.
Great tools, because I think I agree with everything you said. Like, you have to have patience, you have to work with them on a day to day, but they have to have something that they could go to without you, right? Because you can hold hands for so long, but eventually you're not going to be there. You can't be there, right? Eventually, you're a quad 3 now. You need to do it yourself. So things like that. That's a great tool. I appreciate that, because I'm definitely going to look into it.
Yeah,
Please do.
it's a good reminder. I
Yes.
read that book a while ago. Actually, I gave it to my son. It's lying on his night table right now.
Oh, I love
Yes, I know.
It's
Have him
I don't
be
think
like,
he's reading it, but
right. Go home and test him. Be like, teach me the time management matrix.
Yeah.
Where are you? This is the quad
I-
1. Where are you at?
yes.
But people respond to it so well. And I just
Yes.
need a worksheet. I don't give people the book. I made the matrix a 1-page worksheet and it's blank. And so I told my team every week, like on a Monday, print out a blank, and then whatever that's your to-do list. Just put it in the right.
Yeah.
form. Yep.
Hmm. Love that. Love that.
So, what emerging practices or technologies do you see that are going to have a profound impact on the workplace in the coming years?
Right off the bat, I think 360-degree feedback surveys are re-emerging. I'm hearing the language more. And there's a lot of software that's being used to implement those surveys. I think employee engagement survey technology is still going to be out there. So you have your Gallups of the world and Press Ganey and those different vendors. So still doing employee engagement surveys electronically, which is a good thing. What I'd like to see emerge is better exit interview software and analysis and next steps for leaders. Most HR teams are going to administer an exit survey, but if it's some survey monkey or man-made something that goes back to that HR team from the job I'm leaving, the truth is going to be compromised because we've been like almost brainwashing away from our parents who mean well, who told us things like, don't burn a bridge. So we withhold ugly truth when we leave. There's only one person who really knows why you left. That workplace culture bestie who you feel super, super close and tight with, they'll know the real reason. But man, those of us in leadership who really genuinely want to know, we'll get the better opportunities. This was best for my family. And that could be true, but someone else will know the nitty gritty. So I'd love to see some software where I think exit surveys should be third party and they know how to aggregate data in a way that can help companies still be useful to say, hey, here's your quarterly report. You had 4 employees leave. Here are some of the reasons. And I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying here in terms of how to make this better. But if they are giving some very brash feedback, maybe they know how to make it safe or deliver it in a way that doesn't compromise what the person said. So I just want to see technology for everyday like employee development, whether that's an engagement survey or exit interview or state interviews. I'd love to see more of those. People are asking me more about state interviews these days. And last, I'll just say HRIS systems and learning management systems are still on the rise. New ones are being created on a regular basis. So I'm still having very productive conversations with teams about what's the best HRIS and what's the best LMS or learning manager experience platform that kind of functions like a Facebook or an Instagram that keeps employees engaged.
I love that. I know we use Bamboo HR and we love it. And they keep on adding new features.
That's
So,
good.
yeah,
They
we
have a
love
good
it.
conference every year too.
Yes. Yeah, I've heard it's fantastic. My HR person has been a few times. Absolutely loved it. She actually recorded a little video when she was there about how much she loved Bamboo. So it's cool.
They featured
Yeah,
her on
yeah,
the
they featured her.
website or like a
Yes.
blog or something too. It's really cool. Yeah, it's a very cool platform, and I love that idea I think that there are just a lot of intricacies and conflicts in a way that exist that we don't have a way of working around when it comes to exit interviews and even stay interviews, because if somebody wants to stay, right, they may not be as open with the feedback that they want to share based on what they may see. And kind of back to what you said earlier, I think it ties into like that entrepreneur thing, where if we're encouraging people to have that type of mindset, then you're more likely to get that type of feedback because they can see it as prospects for development as opposed to pushing back against what somebody may be very proud of creating, right? Like, for lack of a better word, it's very interesting. I'm like, I sound like Maria Melfa. It's very interesting. We love that turn of phrase, but it is. That's
You're saying I say that a lot?
It is.
It's because learner is my second Clifton strength.
Yes.
So yes, and it's so funny because John Laminger, who's our director of sales here, he has learner in his top, and we were talking about that last week because we always like to talk about new things, and I know that could be my biggest strength, but it could be a weakness a little bit because, like you said, sometimes I want to boil the ocean and I want to learn too much and do too many things.
I have such a hard time with that.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, but I love it.
Yeah, recovery.
So really good stuff.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Like,
very interesting. Even as a 85-year-old, I still find this very, very interesting.
85-year-old boomer.
Exactly.
I love it. You're saying it so convincingly, and I'm like, okay.
That's the best part about it. It keeps, but that's why TTA has the culture that it has, because we will be in. I just like the funniest things. We'll be talking about strategy and like things that we're doing and how we're going to evolve. And Maria will be like, what I think is like evolution is that we just do everything for $0. That'll get them. And we're like, yeah, we would have all the customers. Absolutely. But just stupid stuff like that. And it's
just random
funny.
thoughts. Yes.
It's funny.
I like being random. Yes.
We have a good thing going here, and we're happy to hear from you and all of the strategies to know that like there are things that can be done and that people know to be done to maintain their culture, and that it can be not easy, but it can be simple. You can make it simple. You don't have to boil the ocean.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that so much. We are at the time where we go a little bit further into our meet and greet with each other, Mechelle. So, David, I think we have the TTA 10. Is that what it's called?
It's the TTA 10. 10 final questions for our guest.
All right, Mechelle. So we talked about the TTA 10. I got 10 questions to ask you. They're playful. They're fun. There may be a right or wrong answer, but that's not the point. We want you to answer them as quickly as you can. We will record, or we'll time you rather. And then David will have a fun little thing at the end to celebrate your achievement or lack thereof. But either way, it's all in good fun. So
she seems super smart.
She's wicked smart.
She's gonna get it all. Wicked smart.
All right. So, Mechelle, are you ready?
I am ready and scared.
Okay, don't be scared, please. It's not. I promise, it's not that
scary.
Bad. All right, David, countdown, please.
Yes, Jocelyn. 90 seconds on the TTA 10 clock. Beginning now.
What color do you get when you mix red and yellow?
Green.
What would your weapon of choice be in a zombie apocalypse?
A gun.
What is 2 + 2?
4.
Name one of Donald Duck's nephews.
I have no idea. Ronald.
Okay. I speak without a mouth and I hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?
A patient who needs help.
Sorry. The cool Kool-Aid man just burst through the wall. What does he say?
Oh, man. Are you thirsty? I don't know.
These are great. If you could travel anywhere in the world today, where would you go?
Spain.
If you got a dog tomorrow, what would you name him?
Lucky.
What is 5 + 2?
7.
What is your favorite scent of candle?
Ooh, coconut lime verbena.
Very specific. I love it. That's 10 questions. David, what is, I don't even care what the time is because those answers just deserve a win anyway, but results, please.
A time of 1 minute and 12 seconds, easily a winner, and a bonus point. Because when you asked what the Kool-Aid man said, and when he comes through the wall, you said, "Oh man," which is pretty close, actually. To "oh yeah," which is he actually says, "Oh yeah." So you didn't
That's
even
the
realize.
modern version.
Red and yellow makes
millennial
green at
version.
the beginning. Killed me.
That's so funny because I had to think about that for like a quick second too. I'm like, wow, I haven't thought about that since like 1932.
She was in the first grade.
Exactly.
She said green with such confidence. I believe her at this point.
Right.
So,
That's what
yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm learning so much today.
I only knew it was wrong when you all laughed.
Here.
We do have a special salute for Dr. Rob because of her triumph in the GTA 10. And we went to the music department of the GTA 10 Institute and came up with the following. Please enjoy.
Well, gather round, folks, let me tell you about a star. Dr. Mechelle, she's raised the bar. The woman is practically a business messiah with skills as hot as a spicy jambalaya. Oh, Dr. Rob, you're a wizard with flair, turning complex into simple with nary a care. Knows workplace culture down to her soul. Just call her butter, cause she's on a roll. She's a master of people ops and thought leadership too. Strategize and change, oh, there's nothing she can't do. From idea to action, she's the master of the game. Dr. Rob, remember the name. Many broadcasts and talks like riding a bike. Step aside, pay attention, and hand her the mic. An adjunct professor, awards by the ton, and perish the thought. Her lessons are fun. A raging cage, and hold on to your chairs with a doctorate from Baylor. Oh yeah, go Bears.
Yeah.
She's critically acclaimed like Humphrey Bogart in culture. She's got more than non-fat yogurt. So here's to Dr. Rob in the spotlight so bright. With the skills and heart as the best dog, she's a guiding light. For behavior and performance, she's on the job. Forget Dr. Phil, call Dr. Rob.
Yes, there you
That
go.
is fantastic. That might be one of my favorite. And now this is your theme song when you walk into your keynote speaking or anything else.
People need to know you have more culture
Exactly.
than non-fat yogurt.
I appreciate the Louisiana jambalaya reference.
Yes.
So good.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. This is such a wonderful conversation.
Not even just saying this, one of my favorite episodes that we've done. This, like, you are so authentic and natural, and your responses were everything. This was fantastic. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And like, girl, let's get some jobs. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. This was absolutely amazing. I really appreciate it. Let's keep the conversations going.
Yes.
And just help all the people with their cultures, man.
You
They need
got
it.
it. Yes. For more information on cultivating your workplace culture, visit us at thetrainingassociates.com. We'll see you later.